Hello. Hi there. I'm gonna make a video today. Um, Talking about more of my crazy thoughts because why not? Um, so something that I've been thinking about lately is idealism and being someone who I consider to be kind of an idealist, like to a fault. And it's kind of what I want to get into. And basically what I've come to realize is that my idealism and sort of um, my expectations for life has in a lot of ways made it very beautiful and interesting and meaningful, but it's also led to a lot of conflict and um, internal struggles because of the sort of conflicting nature between what you expect the world to be and what it actually is. Um, And I guess that's what I wanted to talk about today because it can be a pretty crushing feeling. I've grown to appreciate, I think I've grown to appreciate sort of a more realist, sort of down to earth perspective. And it's not something I really started to appreciate until, um, the start of my journey through adulthood because you learn pretty fast that, you're not really entitled to anything in this world and that it takes work to make anything actually work, in your favor. It takes a incredible amount of effort to shape your reality. Um, and I guess in the past, I held a view that was um, a bit naive. I'll say naive because I guess I wasn't expecting this world to be nearly as disappointing or like crushing to deal with. Um, I had an optimistic view, kind of, only kind of though, because I think I was well aware of the harsh realities. I wasn't like completely oblivious to it. I read like I don't know, like you read plenty of history and you deal with just a little bit of trauma in your life, and that kind of stuff. Like it opens you up to realizing that the world doesn't work the way you're led to believe it does. Schools, they kind of program us to, or at least like early education for like children. I think it starts to shift around your teenage years because you start learning more about the more grim parts of reality. But as like little kids, the stories they tell you are full of hope and optimism and heroism, and the good guys always win. Um, but those stories are dangerous because they, in a way, they can kind of program you to have false expectations for how any of this actually works. Um, and for me, I think I fell for those stories, at least on a deeper level, because I wasn't like, again, I wasn't oblivious to the harsh realities of the world. I've had bad experiences that taught me otherwise, and I've had I've read enough history to know just how fucked up the world can be. It's just I think I didn't like fully digest it, until I started to see it for myself. And I've always had a history of avoidance and intense anxiety, and I think it's largely because of my expectations for reality and sort of the disappointment that has come from not having those expectations met. And those expectations are that everything's fair, that, happiness is like a given, but it's not. It's something that you have to work really hard for, and even then, it might not work out. But my idealization in the past, I think, has really like it's caused me a lot of like pain because like I've idealized like people before too, like um you know and I think we all do to some extent in our early childhood, like we see adults as being these superheroes, or unless you have a really shitty childhood, and that can kind of teach you pretty early that, yeah, people are fucked up and nobody has it together. That too, but I think one thing for me is romance in particular. That's something I've really idealized. I watched a lot of like shitty rom-com animes back when I was a loser in middle school and high school, and it ate up a lot of my time. So I guess I just had this feeling that it was gonna work out that way, um, and only to realize, like, now I'm 21, I've never been in a relationship, um, and I think there was a part of me that avoided a lot of opportunities for that because I was afraid of being disappointed. I was afraid that whatever relationship I got into with certain people, that I would either be rejected or, you know, it wouldn't live up to the expectations I had. And so to spare myself all those feelings, I kind of just avoided. And I've always been like that. I've always avoided a lot of situations because of my fear of fucking up, being rejected, or disappointing others, or disappointing myself. There's something I realized, though, in particular with creation and the act of creating and the act of art in particular. I took a class, a drawing class. I got to take one in college, and it was drawing one, so everything was observational drawing. Now, before going into that class, I had a very, I don't want to say, like, I think it's a privilege to be able to even do that in college in the first place. So it's not that I looked at it with, like, like, it wasn't like I was going to be disappointed, but it was more like I had, like, low expectations going in, because I knew that the reality of drawing one is it's a lot of observational drawing, and there's not a lot of imagination involved. You just draw the object that is in front of you. And that's most of drawing one. And you don't get to, like, the imagination or, like, high concept things till later. You have to learn the basics first. But what I learned in that class is that it was actually really rewarding to draw from observation. And that's because it led to a lot of revelations. And that's that our expectations for how, like, the objects we're drawing, for example. When we draw objects as children, we make all these assumptions about how it's supposed to look, and what I think of is, like, the chairness of chair kind of thing. Like, we have an idea of what a chair is. Like, what exactly is the chair? We don't know. Is it the legs that make the chair? Is it the fact that we can sit in it? We don't know, but we have this idealized concept of what a chair is. And so when we draw a chair, we think we know what it looks like. And this happens when we're kids. When we draw, like, people, for example, we draw stick people. Is that what people look like? Not really. But it's what we draw, because we have this idealized sort of form of what things look like. And we make all these assumptions. But the reality is then when you draw, and this is why so many people get so frustrated when they draw, is that what they're drawing doesn't match up with their idealized version of it. And that's because their expectations are off from what the reality of that object is. So I found that when you draw, and this is what they kind of teach you, is you have to kind of unlearn a lot of things. You have to unlearn what you think the object you're drawing is. In a lot of ways, you have to forget that you have to forget what you know. And that's a very challenging thing to do. So when you draw, you have to forget the object and just look at, like, what does it act. You have to trust your eyes. Like, what does the object look like? In a lot of ways, I think you have to trust the object you're drawing itself instead of yourself. You you have to look at how the light is like reflecting off of it. You have to study the curves. And I realized in a lot of ways it felt like intimate. Like it felt like a relationship to some degree, because when you're drawing the object, in a way, you're giving trust to the object itself and how it appears instead of your own made up fantasy about how the object looks. And then what you find is that when you trust the process and you give yourself to whatever you're drawing and you try to, understand it, you try to understand it from a different perspective, from the perspective that is more true to its nature, then what I found is that what I drew ended up looking more accurate. And I think that's the experience for a lot of people, is you have to look at it more objectively from like how the light is touching the surface of the object to the curves. Like it feels intimate. And I found it like oddly freeing. And then I realized that I could apply the same sort of idea to life in general, and relationships and other people. Part of my problem in the past is I've attached myself to like certain expectations, like for how college was going to go, or how relationships with certain people were going to go. Or I had this idealized version in my head of what a person was like, and it was to the point where it became an obsession, and that person, who that person actually was, I didn't really know them like I thought I did. And part of it is that you have to treat like other people like an observational drawing. You have to trust in them. You have to trust in what they're saying about themselves, or what they convey to you to some degree. You have to sort of listen to them, and you have to observe carefully. And my problem is, as sort of this weird sort of idealistic person, is I'm always making assumptions about reality, or I'm always jumping to conclusions too fast before experiencing it and getting to fully know it, like personally, And there's no way to understand something without experiencing it. You might think but like writing words, even just writing words down, in a way kills like the experience of something, because it's more reductive than we think, to just like to put things into words and to come up with ideas. Like as soon as you do that, you're forgetting all this stuff that you can't know without experiencing. I don't know if any of that just made sense, but like it's just that when it comes to like relationships, like in a way, I think part of the problems that a lot of people are having these days is that they put all these crazy expectations on the other person, and then they expect them to live up to their fantasy. But the reality is that if you completely avoid them because they don't match your expectations, then you'll never know what it was actually going to be like. So don't avoid people that you have interest in just because you're afraid that they're not going to hit every flag. You gotta at least try. Maybe. I don't know. That sounds kind of dangerous too, though, because sometimes people have red flags and you should probably run away. But at least in my experience, I feel like I've just avoided so many potential relationships I could have had with people because I was too afraid of getting hurt. But the thing is like, there's no saying that's more true than you miss every shot you don't take. Like, you'll never know how it's actually going to go unless you just take that leap of faith. But yeah, that's just what's been on my mind lately. Like, I've appreciated being more in the moment lately, and being more grounded to reality and trying to trust what reality is trying to tell me instead of trusting my own fantasy and ideas. I say that, but I'm still probably going to go back to, I don't know, being a weird, hopeless dreamer who keeps making up stories about how, the universe should work when in reality it won't, and I'll probably disappoint myself time and time again. Like, I say all this, but am I going to actually integrate it in my own life? I don't know. I'm really good at yapping about a lot of things. I'm not really good at putting a lot of things into practice. But it's a good thing to keep in mind, though. Um, but yeah, I don't know. That was just on my mind, so I thought I'd talk about it. Yeah.